You are watching a Fact TV presentation of the town of Swanzey.
But we can start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody. All right, we'll get started right into it, right, Mark?
Make a motion to approve the regular minutes for April 15th.
Second.
Discussion? All good? Yep.
One, page 2, I think the statement that is paragraph 6, where Mick is explaining, and the minutes say he then put out the fire as Jimmy requested, or as he requested. I think he just didn't put more logs on the fire, as Jimmy requested. He didn't put the fire out at that point.
Yeah, my statement was, I asked him to put no more on, let it die off, let it stop.
And the fire didn't go out at that time.
No, you're
So
right.
the minutes say he put the fire, that Mick said he put out the fire as Jimmy requested.
Yeah, I asked him not to put anything else on it.
It's the only thing I found.
Mark,
Make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second?
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Make a motion to approve the non-public minutes for April 15th, sessions 1 and 2, and April 15th, session 1.
I second that.
You got anything on those, Bill? Wow. All in favor?
Oh, we have a
Aye.
14th.
We okay? Okay. We approved, yep, good.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on. Who do we have out there for public input? Let's go, Scott. Thank you for coming tonight. No matter what you got, we're ready.
You got my mouth full of pizza, so I don't know if you can understand me.
Where'd you get that pizza? Is it good pizza? Is that a local pizza place?
Some guy gave it to me, yeah, I don't know. It's really good pizza. But I'm just here with the Preservation Society and just for the Grange Hall, little update on that, maybe not, I'm not giving you an update, but we're looking for an update on the painting of at least the front of it anyway. Because I spoke with Stefan there at the Whitcomb Hall, Town Hall, here in Whitcomb Hall here. So he had said that you and Stefan met, right, with the painter?
And Marty, Marty,
Yep.
we met with Marty last week, and he had some concerns on who was gonna fix or pay for some of the, like, clapboards and stuff, because he actually hadn't looked at the Grange building, I guess, before he gave the estimate, so it does need a little bit of, him and Joe are gonna go walk the building just to see and kind of get an estimate of what might need to be replaced before he paints it. And then, Joe, I'll bring that list back to the board to just make sure that, that we're okay. Maybe if we take the money out of the Grange Hall, depending how much it is to fix it before he can actually start painting.
To see how bad they are, then, because
Yeah.
we did the same here for Whitcomb Hall last time, and some were just marked and painted for
Yeah.
replacement later.
Yep,
That could be done maybe there too.
yep.
How bad
Yeah,
are
so
they?
he-
Do you know, Scott?
I don't know how bad they are, no.
Him and Joe are gonna go walk it, and that will,
Yeah,
that will.
see if the same thing.
That's an interesting idea, just mark it to replace later.
Yeah, or at least maybe just the front part of it there for
Yeah.
the old home day.
Yep,
And it looks like Stefan is going to be in charge of, what do you tell me now? I get actually the L-chip, but other means of financing too, but he mentioned the L-chip he's going to be submitting something for, is that correct?
I know the committee was planning on submitting something, and I believe the letter of intent is due in May.
I mean, our committee, right, is,
Yes.
our building committee. It
Yeah,
hasn't-
sorry, well, there's a
has-
building committee and then the other committee, right?
Oh, yeah.
Or is there?
Or actually, it's just the Preservation Society, I think,
Okay,
as a
yeah,
whole. I
the
think.
other committee before the one that the board just appointed.
That's one thing we wanted to get straightened out, whether Stefan was going to take care of that. It sounded like he was going to take care of
I don't
that.
think we really can, the town, I wouldn't submit for a letter until we have a plan. Like, we need a plan of what we're doing with the building before we even, because LCHIP is very strict with their requirements. So, and it will take a lot of time, you know, putting the application together. So we just want to make sure that we have an intent before we submit the letter of intent.
An intent before the intent. Is that
Yeah,
what you
we
mean?
need
Yes.
a plan. We
Yep.
need a plan because, like, I've been through the whole LCHIP application before, and it's very,
Yeah, Stefan was saying the same
it's
thing.
intense.
There's a lot in there.
Yep.
And it has to be specific as to what you're going to do and how much
Yep.
it's going to cost and estimates and things
Yep.
like that.
Yeah.
So, but the letter of intent is more or less a placeholder, isn't it, for the application in the fall? Or is it?
The application would be due, I think it's the end of June.
Oh, I was under the impression the letter of intent was due at the end of June.
The letter of intent is due mid-May, and I believe the application, Elaine has her hand up, but I believe the application is due June, end of June.
Okay. So Stefan is still going to be doing that, not Preservation Society people then? Oh,
I can't really confirm that. Like I said, we really need to determine like a plan and a use for the building,
Yep.
because that's all part of the application for LCHIP.
You mentioned the use too was going to be, that we shouldn't worry about the use, that you guys or him or somebody was going to be reviewing uses for that. But speaking of that, you know, you mentioned that, and I'd heard this before about possibly a commercial kitchen in there and maybe something like the Meals on Wheels type of things, which is a nice use for that. And also, the Recreation Committee was still interested in that for use, you know, for their storage and recreation games and things like that, which would be a good use for that too. And if that were the case, it might help generate interest in the building at town meeting for additional funds for that as well, if we actually had a use for Recreation Committee using it as well. So, that's only
Yeah,
on that.
we have a lot of ideas floating around
Yeah.
out there, just nothing solid that the board's been
So then
recommended.
it doesn't sound then like we're going to make that application deadline?
So, Stefan's here, so maybe we can ask him.
Well, what do you want to add to it?
The letter of intent for LCHIP is due April 29th. And if we don't get that, then we can't apply at all. This is just a letter of intent saying, yes, we will apply. You don't have to have a plan, it's just to tell them that we're going to do it. And it's due the 29th.
That's the next week.
Can you add to this at all?
So that is correct. I personally am not a fan of applying to grants without a plan, but there is nothing preventing us from submitting the letter of intent, because we could easily, there are plans that exist for the building. It's just a matter of what you would want to move forward with. So there's no harm in submitting the letter of intent.
So where does the letter of intent come from? Who's going to do that?
That's what we're here to decide, I think.
Yeah, we got to get, it's still saying April 29th?
Was that something you were going to do, Stefan?
I'm happy to do that.
Happy to do that, because I know when we spoke about that, it sounded like you could get that in.
Any funding is,
Yeah.
I'm fan.
Yeah, okay. So would that be all right?
So did you know, there's a deadline of April 29th, you think you can beat that? You can do it?
So that'll be all right then, if Stefan submitted that for us? And then we can
Do
get,
you guys have any problem with? No?
Nope.
Mark?
that'll give us enough time until the deadline for the application is in then. And with the application, we'll have to have a plan.
What did
so-
you say in the application was the deadline? Did you say the application deadline?
The letter of intent deadline is April 29th.
And that's all you know, is their letter of intent.
And I think the application itself is due in June.
I feel like
That's
it's
what
like
Lauren
June 16th, somewhere mid-June.
Okay, so there's not much time there, right? So that brings us back to actually formally forming the Grange Hall Building Committee. We're informal now, you know, so, but when we decide who's going to be on the committee, then, well, I'm just thinking, yeah, do we need that or not? Maybe not. Maybe we could just do it as a preservation society as to filling out the the application for the LCHIP. Because Stefan is going to be filling it out, correct?
Well, yeah, it's a portal, but we could assign whoever is basically administers the portal, we can assign people. So like we could assign a lien or whoever to take part in the application.
Okay. So
Didn't we already?
then should the Preservation Society pick
The building committee, I thought we discussed
pick the
this sometime.
project.
Where did we end up with that? I'm confused.
Well, I think that should be up to the Board of Selectmen, what they want, what the board wants to see
Yeah.
come to fruition with the Grange Hall.
So we're talking about a project to pick for the application, something specific.
I
And of
think
course, there's the foundation.
If it's a preservation, if we're looking for money for the preservation of the building, you would have like the, quotes, like that's what I was thinking, the painting and whatever it is, to fix the foundation. I think that's where we need to focus, is on like preserving the building. And I think that would be our best bet to get funding through LCHIP. So if we could just have a plan in place of, we're gonna fix the foundation, we're gonna fix the windows, we're gonna do, you just have to have all of that kind of lined up. We really should have already have all that, all the quotes and everything kind of lined up before we submit for the application.
Well, we can work on that. If we don't make that deadline, then we don't make it. Then we can withdraw the letter of intent, or if you don't even have to withdraw it, then we'll
Try
get our
again,
application.
yeah.
So yeah, that's a lot to get in, and if we don't get it, then we can make it for next year, maybe, for something like that.
Definitely, yeah. And when I did the one for the meeting house in Grange, I basically used the preservation plan that they had, which we have one, and it's current. I think it has to be like within 10 years, and ours does meet that criteria. But that plan is really helpful when you're filling out the portal, filling out
Yep.
the application, because you're basically taking the assessment and all of those recommendations, and you're saying this is, what's been recommended, and LCHIP will want to see that you have that assessment plan in place,
And that
and
was
then
all-
it's been updated.
From Michael Petrovic, wasn't that the one you're talking about?
I believe so, yep,
Yeah, okay. So yeah, before that runs out.
yep.
So, all right.
We were under the impression that when we met 2 or 3 weeks ago, that there was an actual building committee that we had approved based on the people that you had presented.
Okay.
And we have considered others, as I suppose you have as well, but at least you got the basis for a building committee.
Yeah, that'd be fine, right? If it's the formal building committee now, then that's good. We'll let you know who is on it, I guess, officially.
And after you left, we appointed you chair.
I did know that, but I
Okay.
still thought it was an informal chair until it was official that you appointed
It's
the
a
committee.
done deal. I
But
think
it's done.
we put out on the website that we're looking for volunteers, but
That's
yeah,
what I-
you're
No, we
more than-
didn't. And we
yeah,
didn't find anybody else either,
yeah.
but okay.
But it's open, and people can approach
Yep.
us as if they
Okay.
want.
Okay, then we're official.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think that's all I wanted to know. We can get together and look over the architect's report, and I'll talk to Stefan on and off about it and see if we can get something going.
And we were talking about maybe there were some options about getting an expert person on foundation work to
Yeah.
look at the building also and try to give us another assessment, another.
And we do have that one, I
outside.
think, Bill gave me a drawing of one, and we did have that one there, which would be enough for the application at least, if we had at least one estimate there, and also with the assessment of it. But I don't know how old that one is, come to think of it. If it's too old, it won't, no, it's within 10 years, so that's gotta be within 10 years. Yeah.
And then Lori mentioned in the conversation I had with her that, we can include the painting of the building, even though we're getting that in kind, we can include that value as part of what we consider our cost.
We can't if they're already gonna start the paint.
Well, I'm not sure when he's going to do that,
Right.
but right now, that could be part of our letter of
Yeah.
intent, or in a sense, we're intending to paint and preserve the building.
So if they started painting after the letter of intent, would it still be disqualified, do you think?
No, the grant has to be approved. If you're putting that in
Prior
there
to.
on your application, that you're using $50,000
Okay.
for a paint,
Yep.
like, it says it right on the criteria, you can't begin the work until you've been awarded the
Okay.
funds.
All right,
So then that wouldn't work.
yeah, okay. Good to know.
Good thought, though.
Stefan?
I do want to clarify that the plan that's being referred to, Petrovic's plan, that was the plan of an architect and does not speak to the structural integrity of the building. And that is something that we really should have sooner rather than later if we are going to apply for this.
Okay, so then we would have to hire someone for that, most likely maybe through Petrovic's office, his structural engineer maybe.
So Stefan does have an individual that was recommended to him by, was it the Preservation Alliance? Or, yeah.
Oh, you do?
So,
Okay.
so you'll have two names that
All right,
you
then
can work with.
we'll get together, and Stefan will get that name from him. All right, see if we can't get it going sooner than later. We'll try for that deadline.
We've also learned by the back door that a Phase 1 environmental might be advisable just to have on record.
For what, for the lead paint you're talking about, or what?
No, for any potential grants that we might be applying for. And
Yeah, okay, Phase 1
financing We're
environmental,
applying for. They're
okay,
good for 4 years, so,
all right. All right, then we'll put that on the list.
yep.
LTIP doesn't require that one, though.
Okay.
As far as I know.
But yeah, it'd be good to have, yeah.
But yes,
for
rural
others.
development.
It's inexpensive insurance, as we've found
Yeah,
out.
yeah. Okay, I think that's it. Is that it? Covered it all, do you think?
The only other thing would be a little housekeeping. The Grange Hall Advisory Committee actually sunsetted, so the Grange Hall Building Committee is the only actual committee pertaining to the Grange Hall now.
Right.
So that should be, the advisory should be taken off the website and the building committee put on.
I'll have to look back in
Okay.
the minutes to see what it was,
It's
yeah.
a name change.
Yeah.
All right. Think that's it?
Thank you, Scott.
Okay,
Scott.
thank you.
Scott, thank you.
Grab another piece.
We have a couple gentlemen here in the car that want to come and talk with us, Todd and Cody. You guys want to come up, pull another chair up? Kathy, Steve, I got some pizza over there. It's good pizza. Hey, Victoria. We'll just give them 1 second, and I'll break it up.
Sidebar. I charge extra for that.
Well, Cody, how you doing?
Hi, greetings.
Todd, I'm not sure if you know everybody here on the board. Do you know everybody? You want to introduce yourself, Laurie? You
Sure.
met them?
I have. I know Cody and Taco, Lori Raudiola.
I haven't actually met the gentleman, but I saw them here earlier, so, yeah, welcome.
Great, thank you.
Jay Ward,
Mark
Yeah.
LaBelle.
and you know me and you know Bill, right?
yes.
And that's Sue, best man and taker that we're so lucky to have her. So, you've got the floor. We're going to let you start.
Sure. Well, I can at least lay the floor of the
Yeah.
conversation that led us to.
Maybe introducing our respective organizations would be a good place to start.
You can do that.
Great. So again, Todd Horner, the Southwest Region Planning Commission. We work with 33 member municipalities in Cheshire County, Western Hillsborough County, and 1 town in Sullivan County, and we work with our member municipalities on a wide range of public policy and planning issues, transportation, brownfields, economic development, natural resources, and more. And we've appreciated a strong working relationship with the town over the years, and including on a number of different grants, which I can provide by way of background in a little bit, if that's useful. But I'll pass it over to Cody.
Sure. Well, thank you for having us join you all tonight. My name is Cody Morrison, the Executive Director of the Monadnock Economic Development Corporation. We are one of 9 nonprofit regional economic development corporations in the state of New Hampshire, with a service area of approximately 41 communities, span throughout Cheshire and Western Hillsborough County, going all the way up to Milford. We specialize in real estate development, commercial financing, or development financing, including affordable housing, brownfields, and business. And we also provide technical advisory services to businesses and municipalities. Our relationship and history of the town of Swanzey is not as storied as the planning commission's, but through that last service I mentioned, we have been working with the town on a number of years on the North Winchester and California Street project. So Stefan and I correspond on occasion to help manage a federal grant that they got, or that the town got to execute the project. So we're excited to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
So so there are a number of different directions we could take. I could provide some background on grants that we've worked with the town on in the past. I'd be interested to hear from you all what you're interested in covering this evening, if there are particular programs or projects where grant funding is of interest, if there are specific motivations on your end regarding the meeting tonight, information that you hope that we are able to provide to you this evening. I'd be interested to hear any of your thoughts on that point.
This was precipitated by some discussions that we've had as a board with Stefan and our town administrator and the board itself, recognizing the challenges that communities have with regard to development or developing projects, mostly in many cases infrastructure. You just heard a discussion about the Grange building and the challenges that we face with rising property tax rates, and the hope that we could exploit to the best opportunity possible grant funding that's available that we may know about or may not know about. And we're hoping that we would be able to solicit some information from you as to what services you'd be able to help us with, whether it's the grants themselves and making us aware of them, grant writing opportunities, how best to go about it. And then Cody mentioned the administration of a grant. So whatever services you provide, we'd be grateful to hear.
Sure. So maybe the place to start is we at Southwest, we leverage contracts that we have with funders to provide services to our member municipalities. And an example of that is our on-call engineering services. So through our contract with the New Hampshire Department of Transportation, we typically hire a engineering firm on an on-call basis to provide conceptual level engineering services to municipalities who are interested in exploring the feasibility of certain transportation projects. I think my colleague J.B. Mack is going to be here at your next meeting to talk about that program in greater detail, but offer that as an example. We worked with the town on a culvert inventory to map and assess the condition of those assets. We worked with the Swanzey Lake Association and the town on a Swanzey Lake management plan aimed at better understanding measures that can be taken to protect the water quality in the lake. So those are just a few examples of how we at the Planning Commission, we try to use the resources that we've been able to secure from funders and pass on that benefit to municipalities. So that's one way that we work with towns. Grant writing services is another area where we do work with our member communities. There are particular programs where we're particularly active on that front. One is the Community Development Block Grant Program. We've worked with towns for several decades to help them secure funding through that program, which is aimed at projects that in some way benefit low to moderate income people. whether it be water and sewer infrastructure upgrades, public facilities upgrades, including things like daycare centers. We recently worked with the Keene Daycare Center to help them secure a community development block grant. And also projects that create jobs, so create an economic development benefit. A recent example of that type of project is the Cold Stone Spring drinking water plant in Jaffrey was a project that fell under that category because it created jobs. It allowed Millipore Sigma to expand its operations and create jobs. So that's a program where we're particularly active as both a grant writer and a grant administrator. And the other that MEDC is also active in is the Northern Border Regional Commission, their Catalyst program. Cody mentioned the West Swanzey infrastructure work, MEDC serving as administrator on that project. We also play that role with our communities. So those are two examples, and a variety of ways in which we can assist towns, either leveraging our existing contracts, grant writing, helping with administration once an award is made. And also just helping towns identify potential funding sources. So it's helpful, I have conversations with towns about needs that may come up in their master planning process, their CIP process, and we don't always have eligible or a grant funding source that's a good match, but sometimes we do, and so we help towns in an exploratory manner, helping them identify potential funding sources for projects that are coming down the pike.
There's additional projects that we appreciate your work on. One is the updating of the emergency management plan, which I think is coming up this year. And then you're also working with us on a reworking of our zoning ordinance.
That's correct.
That's going to be very helpful. And you have just the right person.
Yes.
Appointed to that project.
Yeah, right.
Thank you, Todd.
And I can attest to the Planning Commission's ability to work and help plan, help guide funding applications, and on the administration side, and to help shepherd that process through. There are other services that are available. There are a number of independent private grant writing consultants. Those that are both in my network and Todd's network that do it. The county has a grants department where any community or nonprofit within Cheshire County is able to reach out to them for help reviewing stuff or identifying funding, which those are good at filling in gaps. I would say the Planning Commission provides the best comprehensive service really from A to Z from throughout the life of a project. So I would say in any of these projects that there is not a funding source that is immediately obvious, I would always go to the Planning Commission first as a first step, because there's various Department of Transportation, Department of Interior, HUD, Northern Border Regional Commission, just so many different buckets of funds. There's a congressionally directed spending process, which I believe we both signed a couple support letters for projects for. So, but the biggest takeaway that I would have is when you're looking at potentially identifying funding sources for various projects, is to reach out and to see if there's any, even if town staff or the community knows of a funding source for it. It's always good to see if there's anything additionally that can supplement and add, to existing projects. And as Todd mentioned, through the Northern Borders program, we do a little bit of grant administration through that program, the LDD program, which was the North California and Winchester Street projects, or the California North Winchester Street project. So it's a role that we can play on a more limited basis, but I would say for more dedicated project planning, grant writing from a municipal infrastructure standpoint, the Planning Commission very much is a good first step in any of those discussions.
Thanks, Cody.
Thank you, Cody. Anybody have any questions of these?
I mean, we do have some projects that eventually we'll want to perhaps tap your expertise, certainly.
Right.
Whatever we decide to do with West Swansea Water and Sewer needs to have some funding and needs to have some sort of engineering work done and whatever. Or depends on how we're going to proceed.
Yeah, I recall Michael Branley and I, we tried looking at a few different federal funding sources for that a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
That's a project that's only a matter of time because there's enough community buy-in for it or enough regional planning support. And it may end up being done through the congressionally directed spending process. Through that process, and that's one that lies more in my area of expertise, is the earmark process. When a project cannot get funded through like normal grant mechanisms, this water project is a perfect example. A member of Congress can take that funding request and recognize the local need for it because they're connected to the community, in theory, more than someone who's working at an office, USDA headquarters in Washington, D.C., for instance. And they're able to work, their policy staff can marry that with the right type of funding, federal funding account, and then 18 months later, you may become lucky and end up getting an earmark grant for it. Several communities have been able to use that process. I've worked on a couple water sewer infrastructure projects through that process. It's slow moving, but I think you all are very much on the right track with maintaining that good relationship with the federal delegation. It's somewhat political. Senate members, there's far more ability to get projects done than House members who can only submit 10 projects, let's say. But for sake of getting too deep into procedural stuff, I would say you're doing a lot of the right things. Being able to have town staff in all departments look at various grant opportunities is will have immediate ROI. But I'd say we can very much reach out to local partners. I know Stefan, and every couple months I'll get a call from Stefan with an idea on how to try to fund a project, and we'll kind of workshop it for a half an hour. I was on the highway last time in Pennsylvania, I think, last time he called me, and I figured, well, I've got plenty of windshield time. so we just game planned it, and I think that resulted in a few earmark applications. So there's a lot of different ways that you can attack it, but kind of not going at it alone and reaching out for help is a great first step.
Very interesting.
So Todd, with regard to the grant writing, there's specific categories that Southwest participates in primarily, or is it across the board?
So I guess depending on the program, our engagement with the town looks a little bit different. So for example, with CDBG, the grant writing fees are an eligible grant expense. So typically the mechanics of that involve signing a good faith agreement with the town that basically says, if the grant is successful, then our fee will be paid out of the grant. If not, it's the municipality's role to cover that cost. With MBRC, we provide grant coaching services through as a subcontractor through a consultant that the state has hired to provide towns with technical assistance on assembling proposals for that program. And a really recent example of that is we worked with the town of Westmoreland to submit an application for that program to support improvements on their town hall. And that is at no cost to the applicant. That's supported through, again, a arrangement with the state. So the mechanics differ from program to program on, as far as, you know, are we offering turnkey grant writing services versus we're a helping hand to, you know, advise and work through ways to make an application as competitive as it can be.
Thank you. In the engineering, can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so again, my colleague JB Mack, who is our transportation program manager, is probably the best position to answer specific questions about that, but the way that usually works is we at Southwest, we engage an engineering firm on an on-call basis to assist towns on specific transportation projects. And we typically ask a town who wants to access those services to contribute a cost share. So depending on the overall amount, it could be 75-25, 75 grant funding, 25% local contribution. And then we handle invoicing, processing invoices from the engineering firm, and we bill the town for the local match. So we handle all the procurement and interfacing directly with the engineering firm. So it, I think, keeps the administrative burden on the town itself relatively light. So that's a little bit more detail on that, how that
That's
works.
primarily transportation oriented.
Transportation oriented.
And then the timber to transit, is that something that JB will talk about next?
No, I can talk about that a little bit. So this is another example of the Northern Border Regional Commission has a variety of programs. The Catalyst program is their flagship program, which is the most flexible. They also have a program specifically focused on building the market in the transportation sector for timber-based products. So wooden bridges, wooden DPW sheds, timber-based airport terminal buildings, anything with a transportation connection is eligible. And we received an award from MBRC specifically focused on helping towns with engineering, design, pre-development work for transportation projects that could incorporate timber in some way. We're working, as an example, we're working with the town of Alstead to replace a short span motor vehicle bridge with a new timber-based bridge. So we're helping them with the engineering piece, the design piece, getting them to being shovel ready so that they can pursue implementation funds in the fall through the same program. And what we found so far is, at least for short span motor vehicle bridges, they are very cost competitive with conventional steel and concrete construction methods, and in some cases are the most economical option. So that program is open right now. We have received funding from MBRC. We're still looking for projects nominated by municipalities. I know I've spoken with you, Bill, and I've had a conversation with Stefan about a bicycle pedestrian bridge that would complement the Crescent Bridge. In our initial, and I've also had an initial conversation with our engineering consultant about that, and given the span of the bridge that would be required at that point in the river, their opinion was that a timber-based bridge would be possible, but probably not the most economical option. And they also said that attaching some sort of sidewalk or cantilevered sidewalk on the existing covered bridge would be challenging from a number of different angles. Just, you know, the existing bridge already has a posted weight limit on it, so adding more load to the bridge would be a complication, and the historical nature of the structure itself would be another complication. So I don't know if that particular project is the best fit for the program, but we're interested if there are other bridges that in town that, you know, either on your rail trail network or motor vehicle bridges, we're interested in identifying other projects to assist towns with.
So with that project, assuming a bridge is built, what's the percentage that the town would take on for the actual cost of the construction of the bridge? Is that on the town, or is there some form of funding that is a participatory amount?
So there are implementation funds available through the Timber for Transit program. I think right now the criteria for how NBRC determines the match commitment required shifts from year to year. I think this year for Swanzey it would be a 50-50 match. In some years it's an 80-20, it fluctuates.
80 being the municipality, or 80 being the...
80 being the funder, the federal funder. Through our current award through the Timber for Transit program, we're looking for a 75-25 match. So we're able to contribute to 75% of the funds necessary for engineering and design, and the sponsoring municipality would be responsible for 20.
The 6x6 signs that Keene has recently installed along their rail trails and other areas in town, is signage like that something that's...
Maybe, I don't know how much engineering or design would be involved in a project like that. It's something we would consider.
It's not a big project.
Yeah.
I admire the signs.
Yeah.
They've done a nice job with those.
Another project that might not necessarily be intuitive is we're working with the city of Keene on a project through our Timber for Transit program that involves a park expansion. And the way we are able to argue to MBRC that this was transportation related is because the park is on their trail network. And that park expansion will involve a bathroom facility and other timber-based structures. So bridges are probably the thing that comes to mind when you think timber and transportation, but there are other opportunities.
Sure.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm good. You guys?
Yeah, I expect we'll be in touch with them about lots of things.
One quick plug on a specific program. If you have any diesel vehicles in your DPW fleet that need upgrading, I know DES is eager to identify more projects in our region for their Clean Fleets program, which provides funding to upgrade or replace those types of vehicles.
Can you explain that a little bit more? I know I've seen flyers on that.
That's the VW money, isn't it?
It's supported by the VW settlement.
And when you say clean vehicles, they're not diesel then, they're using other fuel.
They could be
alternatives?
cleaner diesel.
Okay.
Basically, Volkswagen got caught cheating emissions testing over 10 years ago.
Yep.
And part of the settlement with the EPA was the settlement money was distributed to states in order to distribute for clean energy, motorized transportation infrastructure, and programs like this.
Yeah, so they've used, some towns have used that funding, for example, to buy a electric school bus, but it doesn't, the replacement vehicle doesn't necessarily need to be electric, it just needs to emit less emissions than what it's replacing.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate
Thank
the
you for your time
opportunity
tonight.
Yeah, yeah.
to say hello and
Sure.
introduce ourselves.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Great, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
So Steve, you thinking of?
Cody, I'll see you.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you for coming.
Program, did they make them get rid of funding that we currently have secured is for engineering, but there's the program itself.
Stevie, just. I'm sure we're gonna get hold of you. You got a lot of good ideas there, a lot of good things that are coming up with Swanzey. I think we'll be using it. Stevie's here, has some current use stuff. Should probably, Stevie just said, I was just here because my current use stuff was, that must have been the consent agenda, right? Stevie came up. Said something about current use. He doesn't need to address us. Okay. Victoria. Yeah, come on up.
I'm well.
Good to
Happy
see
to
you.
be here.
How is your new seat going? Your new chair?
I'm enjoying it. Yeah,
Doing
once
all right?
I
Is
get
that
my
the
arms
first time
around
you
it.
ever done it, or
What's that?
is that the first time for you?
Yeah,
Wow,
I know.
it's amazing.
Well,
She's doing great.
I have a good trainer, and I don't let him sit far away from me.
Yeah.
She made me sit alongside.
I did. He tried to sit on the other side
So
of
we're
the
both in
room.
the same situation. This is my first too, so.
Right? So don't you sort of want to reach over to hold his hand once in a while?
Yeah, exactly. But I'm glad you're doing a good job, and I'm glad you're doing it. It's
Well,
nice.
congratulations
Give Scott
to
a
you,
little
too.
break for a little while, right? He needs a break once in a while.
Just appoint him to more committees.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking.
So what do you have for the board tonight?
Well, I have some numbers. And what I'm hoping, I guess, is that this can be kind of a fun thing for us all, okay? Because the way this came about
Do you
is,
have anything that we can look at with you?
I
Oh,
will,
you're-
I'm
I'm jumping.
building
I
my
apologize.
story, okay?
You build it out.
Yes.
I'm listening.
So, preamble, okay? So you know how in February we all get kind of antsy and anxious about town meeting coming, and there's lots of chatter, and so I was doing all that, and I sort of had a fit of curiosity, and it calmed me down because I felt like I'm hearing all these questions, and I want some answers, and maybe I can find some answers. And they basically have to do with, who are we as a town? And are we what I think we are as a town? And how has that changed? So I started digging into numbers, and I was looking at who we are as relative to the rest of Cheshire County, and how we've changed just as Swanzey. And I'm looking pretty much at a time period from 2014 to current, more or less. And I like numbers, I like spreadsheets, but what I was trying to do with this exercise was to see whether, rather than taking numbers, having a story in mind and using the numbers to build a story, to confirm that story, I wanted to see what story the numbers might tell us. So that's what I have. I use really good data. It's the MS1, which you guys are familiar with. I've itemized all the other sources of data, and Lori has indulged me with looking through some of this stuff. So has Adam. I started out with like 25 different charts, and now we're down to 10, My hope is that this is going to take us about 15 minutes, so be strong, okay? And what I would like to do, I'm going to pass out these charts, and what I'd like to do is walk through them, and if you have questions, maybe hold them, and then at the end, I've got a narrative that kind of explains the whole thing, so that you can take that home and think about it. But I also have some questions that this has provoked for me, okay? So, I think that's all I want to say. Yeah. So, don't skip ahead. Just look at the first page. We'll talk about each page.
Can't read beyond the first page? I can only read the first page? Okay.
You're an educator.
Yes, ma'am. I want to know sure I understand the instructions.
Yeah.
I never see it in school.
If you want to give it to Steve, I can share with you.
Yeah.
You can give her this one, because I'll wait for the planning board. You were going to do the planning board, right?
Thanks, Todd. Thank you.
All right. So, these charts they're basically three main categories, okay? The first three charts have to do with demographics, so it's kind of easy, all right? And what you'll see here is a blue column that identifies how much of Cheshire County Swanzey's population represents, okay? If you look at the gray line where Swanzey is highlighted, you'll see that between 2010 and 23, we gained 288 people, which is about 4%. And it's not as much as towns like Richmond and Surrey, and it's not as much as Grange, but it's more than the Cheshire County average, okay? But what's interesting to me about this is if you look across to see what percentage of the county Swanzey represents, it stayed pretty much flat, 40.45%. We haven't, of the total county population, we're not booming, okay? We're basically the same as we've always been relative to the entire county population. So we are growing, but pretty much the same as other towns. And you'll see that about half of the towns in Cheshire County have in fact lost population, so there's been shifting in the county. So I thought that was interesting. So let's look at the second page, which is the median age of Cheshire County municipalities. And here we have Swanzey. All these towns are ranked in order of median age, okay? Now, everybody knows in New Hampshire we're getting grayer, right? What this does is looks at what's actually happening in Cheshire County specifically, and Swanzey in particular, and you'll see that we're very close to the highest median age in Cheshire County at this point. You'll see that Grange, up at the top of the chart, Grange and Keene are pretty young towns. Troy is a pretty young town. So what I started thinking about with this piece of information is we're always talking about the cost of education. We worry about the cost of education. You know, what if we get so many students? What if we build so many houses and students come in? Well, I think maybe we could shoehorn some younger people into this chart because our median age is pretty high. Let's go on to page 3. Here, my question here was, how packed in are we in Swanzey? We really value being a rural town, but how dense is our population? In other words, how many people per square mile do we have in Swanzey? In fact, quite a few. We're pretty close to the bottom of the list there. Grange has more people per square mile than we do, and Hinsdale and Keene, obviously. Keene is a big jump. But for a rural town, there are a lot of people here. Okay. Now, the next 3 or 4 charts have to do with, rather than looking at the entire Cheshire County, we're looking at the 11 most populous towns. So that's Marlborough, Winchester, Hinsdale, just the bigger towns by population. And the reason I'm doing that is the results get skewed if we have a tiny town that has, gains a new factory or something. So here we're looking at the MS1, and we're looking at using MS1 data as a way to put a number on change. So gross valuation, okay? So what this chart is telling us is that between the years of 2014 and 2024, how much of the total amount of gross valuation change in Cheshire County was produced by Swanzey. And what you see is the biggest amount of change in the entire, of those 11 most populous towns was Swanzey's. We had 14.33% of that change in valuation, or growth in gross valuation. So I'm using a percentage so that we don't get confused by absolute numbers. And the graph that's underneath the chart gives you a sense of perspective, okay? Swanzey's bar is very tall. So what this says to me is, I don't know about you guys, but I think of Swanzey as being, we're not a fancy town, we're a humble town, I think. But the value in our town, the value of property in our town has really grown a lot, okay, relative to other towns. Page 5. Here, what I wanted to look at was the difference between, the MS1 breaks apart into two big categories, land that I call housing, okay, and that's actual buildings, it's manufactured housing, and it's the land that those houses sit on, okay, so that's one category. The other big category is commercial industrial buildings and commercial industrial land, okay, so separate those two out, and we're only looking at housing here. Once again, we're taking the 11 most populous towns in Cheshire County, and we're looking at, if we take the entire amount of growth in housing valuation of those 11 most populous towns during our 10-year period, who had the biggest amount of growth in housing valuation? Well, it was Swanzey. So here I'm thinking, okay, and look at the chart below where you can see how much larger our percentage share of growth in housing is. And it's also interesting to note that we grew in housing value more than Keene, which had, maybe a third smaller growth in housing. So the question I have about this chart is, although it's hard to find housing, our growth in value is the highest. So what I'm wondering about this is perhaps the standard of our housing is increasing, okay? I know our land is also getting more expensive. We'll talk a little bit more about this later. So now let's look on page 6. We're looking at the commercial industrial side of things. And here, same deal. Of all the growth in the commercial industrial sector in Cheshire County, in those 11 most populous towns, what percentage of that total growth does Swanzey have? And we're second only to Keene.
Just have a quick question for you. Is this page 7?
Page 6.
6 we're on.
The second page 6.
Oh, did I number 2 twice?
I believe it was page 6 earlier.
There's
Yeah.
a,
4, 5, 6.
Look
No,
at
you're right,
the-
6. It's
I
6.
don't have page 6, that's what it is.
oh no.
It's okay. If anyone was going to be left out.
Oh, yeah.
it should be me.
Oh, yeah, page 6.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll get you one. Well, let's move on then to page 7. How about that? Okay.
I'm sorry,
Do you wanna-
could you just go back to?
Sure.
I thought you said something about Swanzey
Yep.
with regard to page 6.
Yeah. What's the question?
We're second to Keene in industrial valuation
I see
change.
Swanzey. So we're the,
Oh, we're not in the bar.
We never-
I see what you're saying, yeah.
This is the bar, that's one.
The way the software spits out these
Didn't
graphs,
print out Swanzey.
Swansea doesn't get labeled
It's the bar
artifact.
before that.
Yeah. But still, pretty high. Right?
All right. We're on page 7, right?
Now we're on page 7, yep. Okay. Now, this is one that we hear a lot. Our property tax rate is going up, it's going up, it's going up. And I sort of love the commercial, or the consumer price index. You know, when you have arguments about with people about like how much a candy bar costs when you were a little kid, and you can run it through the consumer price index and find out that it's 50 cents today. I did that basically with our property tax rates, okay? So I went back to 2010, I separated out the total rate, the municipal portion, the state and local portion, and the county portion, and ran those numbers through the consumer price index to see how those numbers would feel, okay, today. And the graphs represent those altered numbers. And what the graphs say is that over time, if you look at our tax rate in terms of purchasing power, in terms of 2026 dollars, constant 2026 dollars, you'll see that our total tax rate is going down. You'll see that if we use that same strategy and look at the education tax rate, you'll see that in terms of purchasing power, our total tax rate is going down in education. And our municipal tax rate, which is scaled relative to the education tax rate because it's a much smaller fraction, that also is going down. So I sit with that for a while, and I think, okay, so why do we have such big tax bills? Because those two things don't match up, right? And we'll talk about that in a second. On the next page is current use. And this is one of those perception charts, because if we have such a high population density as we saw on, I think it was chart 2, it feels like all our land is getting built out. But what this shows us is that, in fact, the number of acres that are protected through the current use program has remained really pretty stable over time. And in fact, compared to 2010, we have actually 13 more acres in current use today than we did in 2010. All right, now we're into the heat of the matter here. The next chart is actually 2 pages, okay? And this was probably the most specific question I had, because we hear all the time that if only we could increase our commercial industrial tax base, that would reduce the amount of property taxes that we have to pay, because, that residents, citizens on their homes would have to pay. And I wanted to see if the numbers could bear that out, okay? So I have all the raw data up here shows, this is just Swanzey, we're not comparing to other towns. It shows 2025 to 2011, how much value in residential land we had, how much value in residential buildings we had, how much value in manufactured housing, and likewise with commercial industrial land and buildings. And it compares those two values with the graph that's below the chart. So, it compares that on the next page. Stay on this page. So the chart at the bottom of this page is showing us in blue how the tax rate has changed over those years, okay? It's gone down a little bit, up, down. It's stayed, and this is in real dollars, okay, not my special dollars. And it shows that the town portion of the tax rate has remained pretty steady over time. So if we look at the next page, which is page 10, here we can see how in Swanzey, of the total value of all our dirt and all our sticks broken out into housing and commercial industrial sectors, the blue line shows what percentage of all of our value in town, and I should caveat, I'm leaving out things like electric poles, utilities and stuff like that. This is just those two sectors, okay? So the blue line is the residential, let's see, wait.
You're right.
Yes,
Yes.
commercial industrial.
Blue line is residential, and the green is, yes, and the green is I'm looking at the lower one, that's why I'm confused. Draw a line. So with the upper graph, the blue line is all the residential value, the green line is all the commercial industrial value. And this really surprised me, because I expected that green bar to be a lot taller. And I expected it to be growing at a faster rate, because we've been working really, really hard to grow our commercial and industrial sector. So it's even more profound when you look at the graphs on the bottom of this page, where we're separated out into housing on the left and commercial industrial on the right.
Can you explain the color coding on the bottom?
Yes. On the bottom, it's confusing because the computer switched colors on me. So the blue line is residential land. So the shorter of the two lines is residential land. The green line is residential buildings. And what you see, there's a curve to the line, but what you can see very clearly are 5-year increments where we did a 5-year reval. But you can see the trend, right? And what I see in this chart on the left with the housing is that, for the most part, it seems like the value in dirt and the value in sticks is roughly equivalent, a little bit more in buildings, but not much, okay? So those two values seem to be tracking right along. What we see on the right with the commercial industrial land is the land stayed fairly, the value of the land stayed fairly low into the most recent reval, the last 2 years, but the value of the buildings jumped up quite a bit. It had been fairly consistent until those last few years. So, on the last, let's see, the very last page, and this page, I kind of want you to just, after we look at it, I kind of want you to tear it up and throw it away, because all the other pages represent data that I collected and put in and used the spreadsheet to manipulate. This last page, I just made up, okay? And the reason I made it up was I wanted some way to get a handle on what it would take to increase our commercial industrial value to the point where we would feel relief as citizens paying our household property taxes. And so I imagined a magical world, and we will go there. There's no COVID, there's no wars, there's no tariffs. The only thing that exists are a certain rate of growth, okay? And the rate of growth is, in one instance, the average annual percent change in assessed value for housing for over 10 years that we've experienced in Swanzey. And that average annual percent change in assessed value is 0.4%. Our 15-year average annual percent change is 0.2%, and we're comparing that to our average annual percent change over 10 years in commercial industrial, and that rate is 9.5%, and over 15 years, that commercial industrial average percent change rate is 6.5%. So now we can look down at this graph at the bottom. And the question I'm asking is, at what point, what would it take in terms of growth in assessed value for commercial industrial to finally catch up with housing? And the answer is, we could do it in the year 2043 in our magical world if we used the, let's see, the blue line, if we used the 15, we could do it with both rates of housing growth, both the 10-year rate and the 15-year rate, so long as our commercial industrial rate was at that 9.54%. So we could get relief as property owners if our commercial industrial assessed value grew at almost 10% every year for the next 17 years. Okay. Now, interesting fun fact about that, okay? And this is all written up in the last pages, but don't, well, you can follow along if you want. So I wanted to know if, what if we had, again, magical world, if our assessed value achieved in 2020, let's see, in 2043, our commercial industrial valuation at that 10-year growth rate would be on the order of $927 million, okay? So let's think about Keene, because we can picture what Keene looks like. In Keene, let's see, in 2024, the assessed valuation of commercial industrial property in Keene was 34.1% of the city's gross valuation, which was almost double what we have in Swanzey right now, which is 17 point something. And they had by the way, they had a property tax rate of $33 and change. And in 2024, their number was $785 million, which is 4.5 times larger than our valuation, okay? So, I've just lost my train of thought. Hold on. So I guess really the point I'm trying to make here is that if we grew at this rate, we would have roughly the same percentage of commercial industrial valuation in Swanzey as Keene does today. So we could make ourselves look like Keene in 2043 if we grew our commercial industrial base by 9.5% every year. But do we want to look that way? Maybe not. And so that's where it gets interesting, okay? And so I know this is a lot of numbers, and I think it's really fun to think about. I think it's really fun to discuss. I'm not asking for any action or anything, but I do think that, I guess I'm always uncomfortable with what now to me sort of feels like a false promise that if we keep growing our commercial industrial base, growing our residential property taxes will go down. I'm not sure we can promise that, honestly. Now, I don't think that's a reason not to grow a commercial industrial base because we need jobs, So, but I think the reason that we promote that growth I would like it, to me, it feels a little more honest to say, we want that growth because we want people in Swansea to have good employment. But I'm not sure we can promise the reduction in residential property taxes. And part of the reason for that is that Swansea is a great town, and people want to live here, and our property is valuable, okay? So I did get the chart from the lister, and just for sake of argument, a 1 acre lot now, just the dirt in the residential district, goes for $96,000. That's a lot of money. You know, you could put a hovel on that, but that's still a lot of money. So even if your tax rate is really low, if it's multiplied by $96,000 plus whatever you have on it for structures, that's a big tax bill, right? So as a town, we could cease all services, let our roads go to heck, you know, make Swansea be very undesirable, but I don't think that's happening. So, short conclusion, I mean, partial conclusion is, I would hope that we could think about reframing that promise. I would hope that we would think about knowing that we might have to do a lot of things that could undermine what we consider to be our rural character. We could think about being more selective, perhaps, you know, in our approach to commercial and industrial development.
In what way?
This is very vague, okay? I think in a way that is very, very conscientious about protecting natural resources, because that is a good part of how we identify. And I think in a lot of ways, we're not going to have a choice with that, you know, especially water resources. We are going to be seeing a lot more flooding. We're going to be seeing a lot more potential for damage to buildings. We're not going to want to encourage people to build next to areas that flood, because that's just going to be expensive for everyone. So Mother Nature's going to take care of some of this, but I would like to put on an to evenly rate the hope that we can provide jobs in Swansea with the hope that we can protect our natural resources, so that the many, many, many residents, you know, who obviously live here, can enjoy the quality of life that we have in this town.
Yeah. Are you taking into effect too the impact on our town as far as businesses coming to town and the amount of impact it puts on the town? And do you know what I mean? Like if we brought businesses in here, it's not as much impact of putting, you know, 100 homes in here on the town. And you take 100 homes compared to one building in a small piece of property, and what it's going to take for the town, and weigh out those two things.
I mean, in terms of, you know, like police and fire and the services, that kind of thing?
Soil, water,
Yeah.
fire, police.
And also the employment opportunities,
I
possible.
think that's a big, that's a big
I don't know how
part
to
of what you're trying to say.
quantify that.
I understand
Yeah.
where you're going with this,
Yeah.
but, I mean, I think we're a little, we need to find that balance. I agree, but we gotta find that balance. We gotta take some of the impact off the residents of Swansea by
Yeah.
some businesses and
Yeah.
with less impact on the town,
Yeah.
right? So, you know, you look at Keene, right? What's your population, 23, right? And it goes in the day to 60.
Right,
Am I pretty accurate on that,
Yeah.
Steve? Pretty close? I understand that. That's
Yeah.
not what we're looking to do,
Yeah.
you know? But we are looking for some kind of relief, and the way I look at it, this is just me speaking, that we gotta look at the impact it puts on our town, too.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And that's exactly the kind of discussion that I'd love to, you know, if anybody wants to sit around, put their feet up and, you know, talk about this kind of
Good.
stuff,
It's
I
good
would
content.
love to talk with people.
These
You know, as
numbers are
from
fantastic
a
for
planning board
educating
perspective.
us to look at. I mean, I'm gonna take these and look at them
Yeah.
more carefully. It was a lot to absorb
It's a
right now.
lot, it's a lot.
There's a
yeah.
lot there, but.
Yeah, follow the blue bars and they'll help you focus.
Yeah.
But, and also know that I actually secretly do enjoy this kind of research. So, you know, if you come up with questions that you think, and Lord will know whether they can be quantified,
Yeah.
you know, I'll dig in. And I also would like to, my goal is to, again, when I get restless in February, to update these, you know, with the next year's data, because then we can have kind of a state of the union, report every year on where we stand, because the number, they will change.
Victoria?
In February.
When?
February, yeah.
Put a lot of time into it.
I did, but it
Victoria, it's
was,
a lot of work. I have one question for you,
Yeah.
maybe one suggestion as well, because we talked about this a little bit earlier. You shared this with me a little bit.
yeah,
On page 7, where you show the gross valuation of the town over the years and the total tax rate change.
6, 7.
Go 7.
Wait. Hold it.
That's the one Bill doesn't have? Yeah.
No, you don't have page 6.
Oh, I got it, yep. Okay,
Okay, so what I would like to see, and I talked to you about this when we talked before, is I would like to see the actual tax burden, total taxes paid by citizens in the town, which means multiplying the tax rate by the valuation, because it's, you look at the tax rate, and that doesn't mean much to me. What means more to me is actually the tax bill that people get.
well, tell me more about that.
Well,
How would I,
If you take the total valuation in the first column, and you multiply the total rate by that, you get the taxes that are paid on that valuation.
okay, so the gross valuation, you're saying, times the rate, okay.
The rate, which
Okay,
is per thousand, so you have
okay,
to
yep,
0.020.
yep,
And that would give you then the total actual taxes paid by the residents of Swanzey on their, on that gross valuation.
okay, and would it, tell me what you would learn from that, okay?
Well, you look at the fact that the tax rate in 2023, the tax rate was 26.87, but I'm not sure whether 26.87 as a rate multiplied by the 654 million is going to be more or less than the total
Okay.
taxes paid. I
Okay.
want to see, what are we getting from our citizens over
Yeah.
the years in order to support our budgets?
Well, okay, so would another way, because somebody asked me this, a similar question, would another way to represent that be to look at our budget over time?
Maybe, but it, I was
Maybe budget versus, in versus,
maybe,
yeah,
and see what the budgets have been too, but it doesn't mean much. The tax rate is whatever it has to be for us to fund our budget.
right,
So if we're talking about the burden on people,
Yep.
it's not the fact the tax rate goes up or down, it's how much the bill is.
right,
And that's
exactly.
what I wanted to see,
Yep.
what the total bill was for
Yep.
taxes.
Okay,
And this is an easy way to get that.
Yep.
Whereas if you look at the town budgets, it's another way to look at it too.
Mm-hmm.
But those can vary widely year to year based on the projects that we're doing and the bonding
Exactly.
we're doing, et cetera, et cetera.
yep. Now, but what would we do with that information?
Well,
Where would you go with that?
I mean, you said that the tax rates have gone down.
In purchasing power, yeah,
Well, yeah,
in
but-
dollars, yeah,
But the tax rates have gone down.
right,
But the actual tax bite
yes.
has gone up.
Exactly, because
Because
our
our valuation's
valuation
gone
is
up.
big, yeah,
And so it's, when we talked, you said, are you surprised that the tax rates have actually gone down? And I said, that doesn't mean anything. It's how much our tax bills have gone.
And yet, so, and I felt compelled to address the tax rate, because we always talk about the tax rate, as if it's this ogre, but it's not the tax rate that's the problem, right?
Right,
That's,
right.
we're saying the same thing,
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
So we need to
But you would
represent what the bills
show
are
what that
for
would be,
people
yeah,
and what we need to run the town, basically.
yeah,
Because because the calculation of what the tax rate is comes from what we need
Right.
and the valuation.
yeah,
So what we really care about is how much we're asking the town of Swansea to pay us to run the town.
right. And I would like there to be a way to represent that so that we could speak to people with that information and say, don't worry about the tax rate, worry about, what you just said,
And you
right?
showed how the budget's pretty much the same, you see.
Yeah, yeah,
So I would hope that
yeah,
we could easily show
Yeah.
where most of that tax increase in terms of dollars
Yeah.
is going to support the schools and not the town budget. That
right,
breakdown
right,
is important.
yes,
And that, dollar figure,
yeah,
we're having to do that because
Yeah.
of what's happening in the state and what's happening in
Right.
the mandates for education, et cetera, that's causing us to do this. And that's what,
yeah. Which we always do in a rough way with the
In a
pie
rough way.
chart that we always put in the annual report.
yeah, and it's on our tax bill. We know how
Yeah.
much we're paying for the school versus that
Yeah.
on that tax
Yeah.
rate. But there's another part there. You broke it down into municipal taxes and
And
school and other.
Yeah.
Just looking at the municipal taxes, that multiplied by, as our, in normalizing it for current dollars or whatever, as you did for some of the charts here, would be a nice idea to see whether,
Okay.
in terms of whatever, $2,026 or $2,014 or whatever,
Yeah.
whether there has been change in what we're asking the town to pay.
Yeah,
Because it could be that with inflation and everything, what we're asking the town to pay isn't that much more for municipal services.
right.
And
I
I'd like to see
suspect
that-
that's what we're going to find.
So I would like to see those
Yeah.
hard dollar numbers rather than the percentage of, the tax rate numbers.
Yeah,
'Cause that doesn't mean anything to me.
okay, good, good.
Thanks.
Yeah,
I just tried to give you some more work.
well, it's fun, right?
I just have one question or two.
Yeah.
Are you excluding the school portion of the tax from those, or is it?
No.
Not in this one.
In this one, you should have taken
No,
one.
I'll have the planning board Thursday night, I'll have the whole thing. I'm just wondering about that because there might be another way to look at it too by excluding the school portion of it, but applying the school portion of it to the industrial part of it, because they pay the school portion as well, but they don't use it at all, they don't send any.
Oh,
people to
interesting,
school.
yeah, that's a great,
So,
yeah.
throughout the years, I can see what the percentage, what the proportion that the businesses have paid for our school bill.
Interesting,
as opposed to
yeah.
the-
That's a very issue.
That's a great thought.
Thanks, Scott. That's good.
School bill. I won't have that done.
No, I'm sure we'll be discussing that at
Yeah.
the planning board meeting, but in weeks to come, probably.
Yeah.
There's a
So,
lot to decipher.
but, so that's a way to,
It's the
to
way to
think,
see that businesses are helping us. It might
in
not have
addition
helped.
to the assessed valuation,
Yeah,
it's this addition, it's taking care of Jimmy's need
It's a hidden
for,
help that you
yeah,
don't see.
yeah, yeah. So how to capture that. But
Thanks for all
again,
this work, Victoria.
Yeah.
Really, it's a lot of work.
A town like ours can't survive without businesses, we have to have. It's just, we'd go under, so we have to find that balance, but
But having data which shows exactly what the burden is,
makes sense.
broken down, is really a
Yep.
nice thing.
Yeah,
so,
that was a lot of work, Victoria, and that's pretty good, really nice.
I hope
Thanks for all
it's,
that information, I mean,
I hope it's useful. I hope it's something
I
that
think it
will
will
be
be useful. I
provocative,
think it
you
will be
know?
useful, and
Can build on it.
it kind of opens your eyes to it, to a lot of this,
That's
It
how
kind of
I
opens
felt,
your eyes and you can look at it a little clearer.
Yeah.
But Scott came up with a really good point, Danny and Jay, so,
Yep.
you know.
And you'll come up with other things too, so,
No,
you
but
know,
those are big things that you have to put into that.
so I guess my only request, when you think of additional things that would be cool to know, try to think about what value it would serve to know it,
Right.
So, would it help in explaining something to the public, or, just how would it strengthen whatever the point is that these numbers are making? Which I'm not really sure, but, okay,
Yeah.
great.
I didn't expect all of that, Victoria, that was,
Well, you're very perky. I'm impressed that you all stayed alert and strong.
yeah, but it was,
I'm sorry, I hope you didn't even try, right?
Thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you for listening, because
I should thank you for what you do, that's very
well,
good.
I just appreciate your attention, and I hope
Shows how
that
much
this
you
is...
care.
I do, yeah.
One thing, just to be
Yeah.
of interest to me, since you're gonna go back and look at all these.
Mm-hmm.
Swansea is one town with the valuation increase, that over the 10-year period that you used, we had 3 revals.
Right,
And for example, Keens had 2
right,
in this
Yeah.
same time period.
Yes.
I'd just be curious about the other towns as
Yeah.
well, just to
that is an issue with the data, and it's one that, having more data points over time is going to help to correct. However, although, down to the penny, we might not be exactly correct, I think the trends, I feel okay that the trends are okay, in terms of only not capturing a uniform number of revals during the study period in all the towns, So just look at the big picture in that regard, is how I'm taking it.
Sure.
Because we just got to start somewhere, but yeah.
And then another was that the commercial over that time period, as Scott mentioned, went up 120 plus or minus %, whereas residential went up about 75%. So the commercial valuation is coming up significantly in relation to the residential. I found that interesting in here.
Well, on that last, the magical chart, that actually has the actual growth rate.
We're just looking
Yeah.
at the chart that
Okay.
shows both.
Okay. Yeah, so it is growing, but,
And it's going to continue to grow because 27's numbers are going to reflect the full, some of what we've got commercially, and then 28 even more. But there's going to be a leveling off point if we don't have the facilities available for that type of growth. And you made a comment with regard to being like Keene. I'm not sure that's really relevant. But if we don't have the infrastructure on Route 10 and we don't have the soils on Route 12, we're really not going to get that 9% growth.
exactly,
year over
yeah,
year.
yeah. And I think, the reference to Keene is, it's just a way, I mean, my imagination is limited, I can't really picture what a great, huge amount of build-out in Swanzey would look like, so I can look to Keene. But Keene is very different in one way. There's a whole lot of institutional land in Keene that we simply don't have, and that's not reflected in their assessed valuation, So there's lots of quirky things, like Grange. Grange seemed very strange to me for a while, and then I thought, wait a minute, they've got a university, that, a for-profit university there, so we need one of those, so a big golden goose, that
One
we,
of the real challenges that Keene has that we don't fortunately have is the percentage of property that's owned by non-taxable entities. Because they're almost, roughly, the last number I heard was roughly 35%.
yeah,
That's huge.
it's huge.
And that puts a tremendous
Yeah.
burden on not only residential, but all taxpayers.
Sure, absolutely.
So while I would enjoy having an elite college here like Franklin.
A
Pierce or
for-profit,
Penn State, but-
college is what you would like,
Yes.
yeah. Not a state school, but a for-profit, yes.
Huge charter school, no, I don't want to say charter school.
So thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria, that was interesting. Victoria, thank you again. I'm going to move on with the agenda, but I really applaud you for all the work you put into this and coming here. It was very interesting to all of us and gave us a lot, opened our eyes to a lot. And we'll probably review this more and more. I'm going to actually keep it here if I have to go back and take a peek, but it's just too much for one night to absorb and digest, but I think it's going to be good information for everybody. Thank you so much. We're all set with you, right, Scott?
He's hanging in to help us with.
Right. We're going to go to that next. That's where I'm going. Mike, you want to go to number 7?
Consideration of new business,
Yep.
move to approve home-based business application for map 218 lot 27 as presented.
Second,
Discussion on that? Would you like to talk about that one at all?
I didn't hear what Mark said.
Okay. That's
It's
it.
approved by the daycare center.
Oh, this is the daycare center coming up.
This is right now is what, and then the next one is the one where Adam is recommending shifting the role of the select board with regard to home-based business to the planning board. That's what I was hoping.
I didn't know that, yeah, okay, Adam didn't say anything about that. All right, so you have already considered this a home-based business, or is that what you're doing now? The one we're talking about?
well, we read the application,
That's what you're doing now, considering. That's right, that step is coming in front of the select board, to decide what's a home-based business, and then going back to the planning board. And that's kind of an odd thing. I remember when we did that, but anyways, continue, because I don't want to get into
You good? Okay, so we got a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Right? Okay, done.
I move to amend page 5 of the home-based business application to remove the Board of Selectmen as review authority, establishing the planning board as the sole review authority effective April 23rd, 2026.
Just trying to make more work for Victoria and Scott. I second.
So I asked Scott to stay to be able to provide us with some information that might help us make this decision.
Yeah, maybe you can break it down just a little for me.
I can. That was done Because the planning board is mainly the administrator of the zoning ordinance and not necessarily deciding on what the zoning ordinance means. The zoning board of adjustment decides on questions as to the interpretation of the zoning ordinance, not the planning board. We administer it. The town as a whole votes on it as to what it's supposed to be. So the reason it was put into the select board's purview is that you would have more authority than the planning board actually is given by the state to do something like that, in our opinion. Or the zoning board of adjustment, one or the other. But the planning board, we felt, should not do that, should not be deciding on whether you can be a home-based business or not, and then reviewing the application at the same time or afterwards.
And the same thing applied to the zoning board, because originally, or many years ago, that it would go to the zoning board first, and then it...
Sometimes it would, right, a special exception or for variance, it'd go to those guys first. Yeah, they'd be deciding on their application too. So it was put to the selectmen to decide whether it's a home-based business. It's an extra step for the person doing it, but it separates the planning board administrative part of it from the decision-making part of it on your view as to whether it actually can be seen by the planning board or not, whether it actually is a home-based business or if it's a home occupation. That's the reason it was put to you guys.
So does this go to the planning board?
Right, that's my question.
It does. It goes to the planning board. I know Adam wrote up in there that the planning board has to pass it regardless because the new state law says that we have to allow the daycare centers in any place where we allow, I think, residential use.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way that's correct, but in a way that isn't correct because, yeah, we have to allow it as a use, but if it doesn't meet the rest of our zoning regulations, then we don't have to allow it, in my opinion anyway.
Right, I believe that's true.
Okay, so that's not entirely correct what Adam is saying about that. One way it is through the state law use, but in the other way through the site plan, it isn't. Because if it violates the site plan, if there's not enough parking, or if there's a danger somehow to the kids or something like that, the planning board can either put restrictions on it or deny it.
So you're saying that contrary to what Adam says, site plan review is not necessary? Or are you saying that site plan review should be necessary?
I'm saying it is. Yeah, I'm saying it is because he's talking about the absolute right to have it. The state says, okay, you have a right to have it. Any place they have residential, but they don't say that if it violates the rest of your zoning, then you have to pass it. As far as parking and things like that. The state statutes.
So Scott, we say the board approves this tonight. Does this then go on the planning board agenda?
It's already on our agenda.
It is on the
Tomorrow, tomorrow.
Well, no, let's be clear now. We just approved this particular application for a home-based business, which is a daycare.
Yeah,
That's what's going to the planning board tomorrow night.
yes.
Not the question of who decides
Oh, yeah,
whether a
no.
home-based business,
No, yeah.
whether something is a home-based business or not.
Right.
That's what you're pointing out needs to be in some place other than the planning board and the zoning board, because we want to separate the determination of whether it's a home-based business or not from the people who are approving its actual siting and, well, I guess the use is approved, but the siting.
Yeah, I was telling you why it got put onto the select board
Right.
because of that, to separate the administrative part of it from the actual deciding whether it's appropriate use or not.
So we're making these people come to the select board, then go to the planning board.
Yeah,
The select board's already approved it. So
approved it as a home-based business, but
Right.
not a site plan. They approved the use. If the select board had a problem, and I'm not sure the criteria you're even using for that, it's in our zoning, so it should be that criteria. But if it doesn't match that criteria, then the select board can turn it down as, no, this is not a home-based business, this is an actual business, or this is a home occupation, either way.
So as I see it, it doesn't have to be a daycare too, it could be something else. I mean,
Yeah.
we have the guy making the ammunition here in town in his home. So it's a question of whether or not that particular activity is a home-based business or not, that has to be decided by someone.
But wouldn't that be in the zoning board's jurisdiction?
Well, the zoning board would decide whether it's a variance or a special exception, but if it's a
Or an allowed use?
or an allowed use. So home-based, it would depend on which zone it was in, whether home-based businesses were a special exception or not. If it's in a zone where home-based businesses aren't allowed, then it would be a variance. If they are allowed, then they wouldn't have to go to the zoning board.
They're currently allowed by special exception in all our residential.
In all the well, the daycares are,
Yeah.
but,
Oh, daycares are.
but
yeah.
other home-based businesses may not be. That's what I'm just saying. I'd have to look at the zoning ordinance again to be sure. But if the home-based business is in the correct zoning board, and it's not, I mean, if home-based businesses are always a special exception, then the zoning board will handle it and not the select board. But if there's a case where it's not covered by the zoning ordinance in some way, then I guess that's why it goes to the select board.
But it
And
would
this
still,
home-based
if the
business
zoning board denied it, they could appeal it, and then it would come to the Board of Selectmen.
could.
You're making it too complicated.
Maybe much too complicated. I think the question is whether what we have in place right now works or not. If somebody has a home-based business which is allowed by right now, they would have to come to the select board for approval before it would go for site plan review. If they don't have it allowed by right, they have to go to the zoning board, after which it goes to the planning board.
The only purpose it goes to the select board is for the select board to decide that, yes, this is a home-based business that matches the criteria in the zoning, or no, it is not a home-based business. That's all.
So,
And it's allowed in a home-based business is a business that would not ordinarily be allowed in that zone. So it's not a special exception thing in that regard, and it's not a variance thing in that regard. Because if it wasn't allowed in there, if it was not a home-based business, meaning it would probably be larger than a home-based business, then it would be an actual business. And if it was not allowed in that zone, then it's not allowed in that zone, and you have to have a variance.
So there's a home occupation and home-based
Yeah,
business. There are
two
two
different
different things. So the home occupation is invisible, right?
It's
A
not by
home-based
right.
business could be evident from the
yeah,
outside.
somebody
of the
could
house.
be,
And that's why it's like that.
somebody could be doing acupuncture in their home.
But there's specific restrictions to it as to
Yeah.
how many people can be there
Yep.
and who the people can be. One person has to actually live at the place and how much square footage you can use there. It's not like a regular business. It's just a home-based
So-
business, but it's an extra step so that if anything that was going to be not invisible, like Victoria was talking about, is sort of a business, but it's a home-based business. Let me back up a second. It used to be covered under home occupation, all of that. And we decided to separate it because some home occupations, you never know are there. They should be allowed by right. Shouldn't have to come before the planning board and go jump through all those hoops. But someone who has a bunch of trucks there, maybe a tree company or something like that, 2 or 3 employees, it's kind of a business, but still it's a home-based business. So the planning board looks at it a little more stringently. But it comes to the planning, to the selectmen to decide whether this is a home-based business or a home occupation.
And the person who decides where it goes is Adam, or the planning office, because they have to look at the application and see,
Yeah,
is this something that's allowed?
exactly. And if he makes a mistake, you guys get and say, wait a minute, this is a home occupation, what are you talking about? You can just say, no, it's not home-based business, it's home occupation. Is it right to do that?
Yeah.
So are you in favor of the select board not being a part of that process and just having it go to the
I'd be
planning
okay
board?
with it, but I think it should be separate. I don't think the planning board should be deciding those kinds of things when they're mainly administrative in the whole zoning purpose. You know, the ZBA, I would rather have the ZBA do it than the planning board do it, because they are deciding, the ZBA interprets the zoning ordinance, and this is sort of an interpretation of the zoning ordinance.
I agree.
And that's what they do. So I would rather see the ZBA than the planning board, and even maybe than the select board. They're more in tune to that stuff than you guys are.
Well, that's what I was getting at, because we just didn't
Yeah.
even discuss it, we just approved it.
No, right, it's not really that, your purview, but I don't know, maybe the planning board wanted to punish the select board for some reason, so that's why we threw it in your lap there. ZBA, I think, would be a better place.
ZBA would be, I can imagine something comes to the ZBA, and it comes to us because it's allowed under special exception, but we decide that it's a home occupation instead of that, and then we just say you don't have to be here.
It just be coming to the ZBA because you interpret the zoning ordinance.
Right.
That's your job to do it.
Exactly.
And this is an interpretation of the zoning ordinance.
Right.
Special exception or variance itself.
I agree.
So it would just be coming under you as an application, just as it came here. Just, hey, is this a home business-based business or not? You know, and you'd be deciding under the criteria of the zoning ordinance, not under the criteria of the special exception or the business.
We'd be deciding whether that use, what the use actually was.
And it may be too big. You say, no, that's not a home-based business, that's a regular business, and you'll have to submit an application that way. Or you would say, yeah, it fits this criteria, there are 3 people working there, 1 lives there, it's not over 500 square feet, and that's that. And then the planning board takes a look at it as opposed to, or deciding the factors of what can be parked outside, what can be stored outside, and things like that in the site plan.
In the site plan,
Yeah.
where it is.
I vaguely remember when it went to the Board of Selectmen, and I think part of it was this Board of Selectmen wanting to have sort of a finger on the pulse of what businesses were operating, and that was.
It might have come from there, I don't recall.
I sort of remember that at that board at that time.
It could have.
Kind of wanted that.
I'd be much more comfortable if it was at the zoning board where people are used to looking at interpreting the zoning rules. And,
I
you know,
think
Bill and
that's
I are
what the
used to
zoning
it,
board
but
is for. I think that's I think this is zoning board all day long. I don't think it should come to the select board.
So a home occupation, would that go for site plan review?
No, the home occupation, regular home occupation is just allowed by right.
So
You don't have to come, but
That's your office.
that's,
You're
yeah,
working from home.
Adam, they go to Adam, home base, home occupation, that's fine. You can run your house, no one would ever know it's there. Home-based business is more visible.
but if there is any question about whether it is, Adam would have to send it to the zoning board for that. So Adam would be the caretaker.
We'll say that home occupation grew,
Yeah.
and they, were parking vehicles outside and that type of thing, and someone complained about it to code enforcement, then he would either push them about it, have them come into the planning board and have the site plan review, or go to the zoning board, and say, yes, that's home-based business. They
Okay.
probably come into the planning board first to argue their case that it's not. It's probably what would happen.
So what do you guys feel?
Well,
I vote no.
I'd vote no on this too.
Me too. All in. So we're not doing the motion then,
Not the way it's written.
not the way it's written.
What's written. I think that,
Do you feel that we have the latitude to change planning board to zoning board? Or do we just deny it?
change the words planning board to zoning, planning to zoning, Board of Adjustment.
See, the part that this gets me with the motion, Scott, is that the way the motion reads is that the planning board would be the sole review authority. So if we switched it to zoning board, the zoning board wouldn't be the sole authority. The zoning, because,
This is a motion you're talking about?
yeah.
But no one made the motion, or did they?
No, well, this was a draft that Adam.
I think the motion has to be rewritten.
So
Yeah.
you can make the motion however you want.
Yeah.
You don't have to go by Adam's motion.
Yeah.
No, we can make a motion we want, but I think the sole review authority is not what we want here for the zoning board, because they wouldn't be.
No, exactly.
I think it needs to be rewritten, and I think Adam deserves a chance to plead his case about why he wants this with us.
Well, he wants it with the planning board, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think we need to ask Adam to come in and explain.
Yeah, I think right here, that's why it should not be a zoning board, but that seems better fit.
He says in his memo, I recommend removing it and establishing the planning board as the sole review authority. As part of our upcoming ordinance audit, I will work with SWRPC to propose revisions that align this section with modern zoning standards and streamline the application process.
I still need more detail from Adam
So-
before I want.
Yeah.
I'd be in favor of what Jay is recommending, that we have Adam come next week or the week after. There's no rush, because
Yeah, we can do
it's
that.
still gonna go to planning board now.
In the meantime, if we get another home-based business application, it's got to come here, but other than that, for the future. Everybody happy with that? Yeah.
Okay, that's what we're gonna do then, okay?
Thanks for sticking around, Scott and Victoria.
You're welcome.
Appreciate the
Thank you,
input.
guys.
I have a second set of pieces.
I think
All right.
it didn't.
Victoria hasn't had her first yet.
Motion was made
Thanks,
and a
Todd.
second.
Take care.
Then there was discussion and they
It's tabled.
tabled the discussion to speak to the town planner.
Good luck reading this next motion, Mark.
Ugh.
It's worse than alcohol.
The name?
Oh, she
It'd be
put it in
challenging for me.
Because I had a line. I didn't know who it was.
Good luck on that name, though, on this next motion.
You could just put to the highest bidder if you can't pronounce the name.
Ronskowski.
You gotta announce.
What is it?
I just really need authorization to sign the title, that's
It's
all.
Ronskowski, isn't it? Ronskowski?
So we're on C, transferring of the title, right?
I move to authorize the town administrator to sign the title over to Dwayne Ronikowski, the highest bidder on the sale of a 2015 white Ford Explorer as noted on the bill of sale.
And I'll second that.
What was the amount?
$2,050.
Great.
We got a second?
And a free parking
All in
spot.
favor?
Aye.
At Town Hall.
Aye. Oh, we're on there, delay. Disability.
So, where, can I see the assessing folder? Because I think I was unsure if this should have been in the consent agenda.
What
or
folder?
The assessing. Is that it?
This isn't it. So it's right here. Sorry. There you go, Larry.
Because I think normally these were done in the consent agenda, so I just wasn't sure if it needed a whole motion, but.
Yeah, we,
I don't see it in here, actually.
If you see anything I haven't signed, Bill, please pass it
Yeah, I
on.
don't
I thought I
see it.
got all of those today.
I don't see the document in here, so
Yes,
I think we
please.
should table that.
T. Okay. So we're going to the tax abatement. E.
We don't know.
We can do the abatements, those.
I move to accept
yeah.
the slate of abatements recommended from the town's contractor, SWRPC consultant.
I second that, but I want to ask, does this include the abatement that I asked to get more information on?
Yep.
And as I understand it, that information is privileged, so it would have to be,
Basically, so that application is in here, and I had them just make a change on the recommendation. And it says, I recommend to request for abatement to be denied the property is properly assessed, and they, that's what they base their decision on, as far as, you know.
okay, well, all right. I understand that. The application was for indigents. So I want to know why, you know, what the criteria, if there is there any criteria that anyone could present that would allow an abatement for inability to pay if the only criteria is what the property value is, then there is no way to abate it. And so that application shouldn't even have been filled out. So I guess I'm asking that question.
Yes and no, because I think there is, I talked to Norm about this today, because I said, well, you know, it's assessing, so you can't deny it, the abatement, because the property is being assessed properly. But he said there is a hardship, that would be a whole nother thing that he could help them with, but they were deferring them to another service.
Okay. All right. Then I'm okay moving forward on this thing.
Okay. we moving? Can we keep going?
Yep.
Do we vote on it?
Yes, I,
No, he said, he seconded it. We didn't say all in favor.
oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'm sorry, guys.
I said aye.
I thought we did.
You and I did.
Yeah.
Nobody else kept up.
So F is for the EMS contract. The end of the contract is coming, and I'd like to just talk about what do we do about that? Do we do an RFP for that? How do we approach this, that it's coming? What do you think we should do?
Well, that's up to the board. The contract, I think, is up June, is it the end of June? So we would, if we're gonna put out an RFP, we should get started on that. Or I would get started on that and put that out, but I didn't know where we had already budgeted for the second half, in the budget. And I think Mike Burke may have said something the other day at our meeting that kind of made me think that we were leaning towards just going with the county, but that's totally up to the board. Are there surrounding companies that would take us on?
Right.
If I put the RFP out?
Personally, I think that's less the question, and the question for me is, if we don't put it out, people are gonna ask why we didn't. And if we put it out and no one responds other than the county, then
I think that's what we have
So
to do.
Bill, you think it's just gonna protect us as we did put it out there, we gave everybody else the opportunity, so when they approach us with that, we can say we did.
if the department head has an invoice for over $5,000, they have to put it out.
Yeah.
Get 3 quotes.
I think-
We're talking.
I think we need to put it out because we may not know of any other place, but we don't know until we put it out. If we don't get any takers, then,
And we just might not get no takers,
Right.
you know, because I don't know of anybody that would.
Well, it was pretty contentious the last round.
Yeah.
but if we get a response, even a response from Cheshire, then they've got to tell us what they're proposing, detail and in print, right? So then that's a starting point for what we're talking about, right? That's how we work. And then I want Mark to share his idea.
Well, I think I'll wait until,
Okay,
so that we're not playing all our cards on the table.
right. That might actually
so
be
I guess we're
that
gonna
might
send
be a
it out.
non-public
All
thing.
right, I think the
Yeah.
board decides we are gonna send it out. Everybody agreeable for that?
Yeah.
We're gonna do it.
Yeah,
We're gonna follow through with it, okay?
Yep.
All right. We got
so
some
I guess
old-
what I'm saying is there might be some ideas we want to share with each other in a non-public session in terms of negotiating for this.
Yeah, we can do that. Old business? Approval? Richardson.
Good night, Steve.
Steve, thank you for coming. Talk to you soon.
I move to authorize a withdrawal of $1,200 from the Recreation Facilities Capital Reserve Fund to pay the invoice from GDS for removal of brush from it.
Second?
I'm going to abstain.
That's for the brush and all that we discussed, right?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye?
Aye. Passed. Billy abstained. You got a little update for us there?
You know, my computer's not working, but,
Okay.
so I'm gonna go off of my.
Whatever you have in your head
Right
there.
up there, but, I did get the, last week I had mentioned the, net metering
Right.
joining the city of Keene, and I did get a draft of the, agreement, which I'll send out to you guys, so you can take a look at that. And they met with the county, I think, and they had some, revisions to the, agreement, which I'll pass those along to you in an email as well. And I did have on here, I was gonna pull up the letter, this is under correspondence, but we did get. Oh, the HP, really? Yeah, we could try, sure. So we did get the, a letter from, the state, basically, on the TAP project, and we have a meeting scheduled with Hoyle and Tanner and Julie. I did had them start CCing Mike Kowalczyk on for the rail trail as well. So we are meeting on Tuesday to discuss that.
Where are you meeting?
The increase, it'll just be a Teams meeting like we always do, the monthly meetings, but, and so we'll be discussing all of the rather large increases. And then we've also got, I don't remember what it was called, but another, I had to sign a waiver to send over to, I think it was I can't remember for the life of me what the name is. Not the Bureau of Rail Trails, but another different bureau for a waiver for something else. Because if we don't get this waiver, then there could be added costs on top of those large increases that we already got. So we are meeting with them on Tuesday and hopefully have a little bit more information. Obviously, we have lots of questions for them, so.
Lori, did you want to mention the Mac
That's what I
property
was
with
just
them?
asking.
We were going
Oh, sure.
to bring that up.
Lori, is that this
That's okay,
Tuesday
so
coming?
I made it through without it. Thank you for trying, though. I know. Thank you for trying.
Lori, who's going to be at that meeting on Tuesday? I think a select board member should be sitting in on that, no?
Sure.
How about Mark, would you sit in on it? Because I won't be here. Well, Jay, do you want it?
I'm not sure exactly what state I'm going to be in
What time is it?
when I
Do you
return the
not
day
trust
before.
me, Jimmy?
But
No, I just think the select
I'm going away
board,
this
no,
weekend.
you don't think so?
That's up to you.
I'm leaving tomorrow. We're going to go into Niagara Falls.
I'm
Well,
gonna-
I would have went,
I'm
I'm
gonna
saying,
be-
but I'm going to be out of town.
Yeah.
So maybe it was me saying I would have went,
Yeah.
just so I would listen in, but I'm not going to be here.
Tuesday?
29th,
Tuesday is 28th.
28th, I won't be here.
You'll be gone Tuesday.
I'm going to leave the 26th.
What time, Lori, is it?
Oh, boy. Let me see if I can get it on my phone.
No, don't, it's nothing to do with trust or anything
I'm
like
just
that. It's
teasing.
I should be able to be there, really. I should be able to. Or Alan could be. Alan might actually be wanting to be there with his interest in the rail trail.
Wouldn't
Well,
create a
Joey
quorum.
could be there.
There's 5 members on the rail trail committee, aren't there?
Yeah,
So it wouldn't create a quorum.
I think so.
Oh, my gosh, it's so hard on a phone.
Well, you can send that email out to Jay and Mark and say,
And Alan,
no.
ask Alan, because
For 3 years, can't show up.
I don't have anything scheduled for that day, so I should be okay. I thought I did.
Public input, we got nobody in the public. Lori, I'm gonna, you all set with those, Lori, as far as the correspondence and the update, right?
There's one
2
thing
p.m.
I wanted to bring up, that
2 PM on Tuesday, location?
It's a Teams meeting, like our monthly meeting that we've been having for
Would-
the whole length.
put it
of
in an
the-
email so I know where we're going, because
Huh?
if you're going
It's a link.
to.
It's a link, you can do it from your house.
Okay.
At your house, that's where the
Okay.
meeting is.
All right, very good.
I'm not the one that sets it up, it's the engineer that sets it up, but I can have her,
Or you could just add
yeah,
somebody
I
to
think
it,
so,
right?
yeah.
So I wanted to share one thing that Lori and I had a meeting with this guy who lives on Partridge Lane and wants to give his house to the town when he dies, basically. And Bill gave me a good suggestion, which I passed on to him and Lori, that we look at the Causeway property that the town was gifted with a certain restriction. Because this guy wants to restrict this to recreational use or non-developmental use, basically. Conservation Commission walked that property on Tuesday, and I haven't heard from the other members about how they felt, but it's right against the Mount Caesar trails, and it would be a nice addition to that. He is offering, when he expires, which is probably long after we leave the board here, but it would be, the house he lives in is like a converted garage barn or whatever he's saying. That could be a good recreation department headquarters or something like that. And then he has a house on the property, and this is what I'm really wanted to bring up today. He has a house on the property that he rents to other people. It's a fairly large house. It's a two-story. I haven't been inside it, but he says that it's possible for us to go look at it if we want to. He was thinking that might be a great place that we could, offer to a candidate for the police department or head or the fire chief as a residence in addition to their salary, as a perk. I got thinking, because he then says to me earlier this week, he says, my renter is leaving in May. So once he's out of there, I'm not looking for another renter. And if the town doesn't want to do anything with this house, come November, when I get back from Canada, where he goes for 6 months in the summer, I'm going to start the process of tearing it down. And it just seems a waste because it's a place that could have some use. And I started thinking about, yesterday I had this brainstorm, I don't know, it'd be among other things, it would be a much better place to store the archives than that little dump down by the dump. So, if the town wanted the property, we might be able to rent it from him for a very minimal fee, he said like $1 or something like that. I don't know if that's the thing. But then we would have use of that house until the property was deeded to us in his will. And it didn't have to stay the archival place, but it would be just an interesting idea of using that space for something.
Where's this located?
Partridgeberry Lane. As I said, it backs up to the Mount Caesar Reservation trails and so on, up to the back side of it. And, his property line, and there's a stone wall that goes in the back of Mount Caesar, and on one side is Mount Caesar property the town owns, and the other side is his property. It's about 20 acres, pretty wild land. And he just wants it, he doesn't want it to be developed as houses, he just wants it to be used by the town. And he's got no kids, no parents, no relatives. He doesn't have any use for the property. He's not going to give it to anybody. He'd like to give it to the town. So it'd be very nice for us to extend the trail network that's up there on Mount Caesar and provide more recreational opportunities for the town. And if there was a way to benefit from these buildings on it as well, that'd be great. Now, this is looking ahead. I don't know. He's younger than I am. I'm going to live forever, so I don't know how long he's going to live.
Okay, let me just ask a few questions. So we would be like, it would be like a lease to us until he passes?
Well, that's the house, but the deed, we're working on language in his will that would deed the town the property.
I get it, but who's responsible for everything of the home?
Well, that's the
Insurance,
thing.
maintenance, all
That's the
that?
thing.
What are the questions?
The reason he wants to tear the house down, Jimmy, is he doesn't want to pay taxes on it. So, I don't know if there's a solution, but I'm just throwing out a bunch of ideas, and Lori and I are working with him on that.
Could we
at this
visit it, have a...
He said as soon as the renter's out there, we could go up and visit it and look at it. See
I
if
think
it's,
we should take the steps to visit it, and then we sit with him and we ask the questions we need to ask. And what would the agreement be with him, right? I'm very interested, because I think it's a great idea, because then we can knock that house down over there, which is just ridiculous, that double wide, we got with everything in it.
Well, we'll have the basement too, after the fire department moves out. It's really bad, Pine Street.
yeah, Pine Street is really bad, and we need to,
Employees were down there on Friday doing something.
No, it's dangerous,
It
it's
is
everything.
dangerous.
Yeah, so I'm very interested, but I think we gotta.
Well, we gotta look at
do it. When is the tenants moving out?
he says May. So another week or
Set up an
two.
appointment, tell them that we're
And
interested in, right?
actually a house right now, or?
It is a house. I think it's at least a
Oh, you haven't seen
three-bedroom.
it, Larry?
I think it's at least a three-bedroom house. I haven't been inside it, but it's got it's
Town
2 stories and a
Rec offices for our...
back wing which looks like a big set of, there's a family that lives in it now. I don't know how many kids they have, but there's a family with kids that lives in there now.
Yeah, so if everybody's agreeable, I think the steps we should take is we leave it up to Jay to tell him that the board was interested, would like to wait until the tenants leave, would like to go over for a visit, and would like to sit with him and talk to him.
Right, and we just have to do this before
When is he
June
going to Canada?
10th or something like that.
All right, so we could do it before he leaves to Canada.
Yep. And then the question then becomes, under what circumstances would we be able to take possession of the house? We would, if we did take possession of the house, we wouldn't be taxing him for the house. We would be responsible for utilities and stuff. He just wants, he would like to have the use of the garage on that house as long as it's there, because he's got a vehicle he'd like to park in out of the rain. But that's about it.
Well, we have to be cautious because we have to think about the expenses of it.
Exactly.
We got to weigh it out.
Exactly.
Because if we could put a use to it, that would be cool too, instead of just storing. But
That's what I don't want to buy something that sits vacant
that's
until he
right. And then
dies.
it just puts another burden on us in costs, and Joe will
Right.
be out there and.
But if we're using it for storage or, remote office, I mean, again, that could be a recreation department office.
Yep.
He likes to be where there are not many people. So he doesn't really want a whole horde of people up there. But archival storage sounds like the perfect thing.
Is everybody agreeable to what I said? You are? Not? Larry, you good, huh? All right, let's do it.
Do you want to?
Who's going to talk to
Well,
him?
I'll talk to him about that. I'll call him and I'll say we would like to come for a visit. Please let us know when the renters are out of there. And in the meantime, you're going to look at that causeway deed and see if we can see language that has a.
All right. So I'm about
Thank
ready
you.
to probably move into non-public. Everybody good with that?